The massive crystal chamber buzzed with panic as alien voices echoed off the walls. Holographic displays showed red dots moving across star maps. The HFY invasion fleet was coming, and everyone knew it. Captain Ji-won Park sat in the back corner, watching 12 different alien species argue like children in a playground. She kept her mouth shut and her ears open, which was exactly what made her dangerous, though none of them realized it yet. The Valorian war chief stood up first, his scarred face twisted with anger. These guys looked like walking tanks, all muscle and metal armor. "We have the strongest battle fleets in 3 sectors, he roared, slamming his fist so hard the table cracked. "Let us charge their ships head-on. We'll crush them like we crushed the remnant pirates." The spider-like Nexari ambassador shook her head, all 8 legs clicking nervously on the floor. "Your mathematics are flawed, War Chief Gorth. Direct assault has only a 12% success probability. We need calculated strikes, precision, tactics, algorithmic warfare patterns." A glowing ball of light floated up from the Luminid delegation. These energy beings always spoke in riddles. "Violence breeds violence, friends. Perhaps we could negotiate, find common ground, appeal to their better nature?" Captain Park almost smiled at that one. The HFY didn't have a better nature. She'd read the reports. Entire planets turned to glass, populations enslaved or exterminated, civilizations wiped out just because they existed. But she kept quiet and kept listening. The arguing got louder. The bird-like Kashari flapped their wings and squawked about aerial superiority. The rock people called granites rumbled about defensive positions. The jellyfish-shaped Aquans bubbled something about underwater tactics that made no sense since this was a space battle. Every few minutes someone would mention the numbers. 3,000 HFY warships, shields that adapted to any weapon, hull armor that had never been cracked, a perfect military record stretching back 500 years. "They've never lost a battle," whispered the Nexari intelligence officer, her voice shaking. "Never retreated, never shown mercy. Every species that fought them is either dead or enslaved." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. These weren't just statistics, they were death sentences. The aliens kept talking, but their voices carried less conviction now. Reality was sinking in. Captain Park pulled out a small notepad and started writing, but not battle plans or weapon specifications. She wrote down personality traits. The Valorians were brave but reckless, charging into fights they couldn't win. The Nexari were smart, but overthought everything until opportunities passed them by. The Luminids were peaceful but naive, believing everyone could be reasoned with. She wrote down their fears too. The way the Valorian war chief's hand shook slightly when he talked about honor. How the Nexari kept recalculating odds that got worse every time. The desperate hope in the Luminid's voice when they mentioned peace talks. An hour passed. Then, 2. The holographic displays kept updating, showing the HFY fleet getting closer. The red dots moved with terrifying precision, maintaining perfect formation, no wasted movement, no hesitation. 17 hours until they reached the outer colonies, announced Moderator Velthar, a tall grey alien who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "We need decisions, not discussions." That's when the real panic started. Species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly wanted to be best friends. Trade agreements got thrown around like candy. Ancient grudges were forgotten in favor of mutual survival pacts. The Valorians offered their entire battle fleet. The Nexari promised their most advanced computers. The granites would provide asteroid fortresses. The Aquans offered, well, nobody was quite sure what they offered, but they seemed enthusiastic about it. Through it all, Captain Park sat silent in her corner. She wasn't taking notes anymore, just watching, learning. The other aliens had stopped paying attention to her completely. In their minds, humanity was barely worth considering, too new, too primitive, too weak to matter in a real fight. That was their first mistake. Captain Park had read the classified reports about human military history. The wars her species had fought not against aliens but against each other. Conflicts that lasted decades, battles where entire armies died for a few miles of mud, weapons that could crack planets in half. Humans didn't fight to win territory or resources. They fought to survive, and survival made them creative in ways that would terrify any sane species. But the aliens didn't know any of this. They saw a quiet woman in a simple uniform, representing a species that had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. They saw weakness where they should have seen patience, inexperience where they should have seen restraint. As the meeting dragged on and the arguments got more desperate, Captain Park closed her notepad and stood up. Every alien head turned toward her, some curious, most dismissive. "Thank you for the briefing," she said politely. "I'll need copies of all intelligence files on the HFY, fleet compositions, tactical patterns, combat recordings, everything you have." The room went quiet. Then the Valorian war chief started laughing. The Valorian war chief's laughter boomed through the crystal chamber like thunder. His scarred face crinkled with amusement as he looked at Captain G1 Park, standing there so calmly. "You want intelligence files? Little human, do you even understand what we're facing?" Other aliens joined in with their own versions of laughter. The Nexari made clicking sounds that passed for chuckling. The bird-like Kashari chirped mockingly. Even the usually polite Luminids dimmed their glow in what could only be described as alien snickering. "War Chief Gorth speaks truth," buzzed the Nexari intelligence officer, her 8 eyes blinking in sequence. "The HFY possess technology your species cannot comprehend. Their smallest fighters carry more firepower than your largest battleships." Captain Park didn't react to the insults. She just stood there waiting, like she had all the time in the world. This only made the aliens more confident in their assumptions. The holographic displays around the chamber lit up with new data. Moderator. Velthar gestured with his long grey fingers, and images of HFY warships appeared in the air. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, sleek black vessels that looked like predatory fish swimming through space. "Behold their flagship class," Velthar announced grimly. 12 kilometers long, armed with plasma cannons that can melt through a moon. Their shields regenerate faster than most weapons can damage them. The images shifted to show smaller ships. Even the fighters looked deadly, bristling with weapons that could probably take out human destroyers single-handedly. Numbers scrolled. Past the displays, energy outputs that dwarfed anything in the galactic arsenal, armor ratings that made other species' best ships look like paper bags. "Their adaptive shield technology learns from every attack," continued the Nexari officer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "First shot might do damage. Second shot gets partially absorbed. By the third shot, their shields have adapted completely. The weapon becomes useless." A granite representative, looking like a walking boulder, rumbled his agreement. "We threw everything at their advanced scouts last year. Kinetic rounds, energy beams, plasma charges, even experimental gravity weapons. Nothing worked for more than a few minutes." The war chief leaned forward, his metal armor clanking. "Tell the human about Vega Colony, Velthar. Let her understand what happens when the HFY arrive." The holographic display changed to show a green planet that looked like paradise. Beautiful blue oceans, white clouds, continents covered in cities that sparkled like jewels. Then the image shifted to show the same planet after the HFY visit, a blackened rock floating dead in space. 4 billion Vegans lived there, Velthar said quietly. The HFY gave them 1 hour to surrender. When the Vegans tried to negotiate for more time, the HFY turned their planet into glass. Not as punishment, not as an example, simply because negotiation was not on their schedule. The chamber fell silent, except for the humming of machinery. Every alien present had heard similar stories. The HFY weren't just conquerors, they were a force of nature, unstoppable and merciless. "So you see, little human," the war chief said, his voice gentler now but still condescending, "this is not a battle for your kind. This is a war between titans, and you are but a child watching from the sidelines." Captain Park finally spoke. "I understand the threat assessment. Now about those intelligence files." The Nexari intelligence officer's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "Did you not hear what we just explained? Your entire species has been spacefaring for barely 50 years. You have no major fleet actions in your records, your weapons technology ranks below even the peaceful Luminids. Your largest ship," added a Kashari admiral, her feathers ruffling with disdain, "carries fewer guns than our standard patrol craft. How exactly do you plan to handle an enemy that terrifies civilizations, 1,000 times older than yours? Captain Park reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small data pad. Earth Command requires detailed enemy analysis before deployment, standard operating procedure. The war chief laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. Deployment? Human, you have 47 ships in your entire space navy. 47, the HFY have 3,000. That's not a deployment. That's a massacre waiting to happen. 64 ships, Park corrected quietly. We commissioned 17 new vessels last month. The correction made the aliens exchange glances. Not because 64 was impressive, it wasn't, but because she'd corrected him so calmly, like the exact number mattered somehow. The Nexari officer's voice turned almost gentle. Young species, we understand pride, but this is not the time for bravado. The HFY will reach the outer colonies. In 16 hours, every civilization must contribute what they can, but we cannot allow you to waste lives on false heroics. Your species could provide support functions, suggested the Luminid ambassador, their glow warming slightly. Medical aid, supply lines, evacuation assistance, honorable work that keeps you safely away from the fighting. Captain Park nodded politely. Thank you for the suggestions. About those files? The war chief threw up his hands in frustration. Fine, give the stubborn human her files. When she sees the real data, maybe she'll understand why we're trying to protect her people. Velthar manipulated the holographic controls, and a data crystal materialized on the table. Everything we know about HFY tactics, technology, and battle patterns. Though I fear this knowledge will only confirm your species' limitations, rather than reveal opportunities. Captain Park picked up the crystal and tucked it away. Appreciated. If there's nothing else, I should return to my ship. That's it? The war chief stared at her in amazement. No grand speeches? No promises of glorious battle? No requests for alliance? Humanity prefers actions to words, Park replied, already walking toward the chamber exit. As the door sealed behind her, the aliens sat in stunned silence. Finally, the Nexari intelligence officer spoke what they were all thinking. Do you think they truly don't understand how outmatched they are? The war chief shook his head slowly. I think they understand perfectly. That's what worries me. Captain G1 Park's shuttle docked with her ship 3 hours later. The moment she stepped aboard, everything changed. The quiet politeness she'd shown the alien council vanished, replaced by the focused intensity of a predator preparing to hunt. Admiral Hyun Kim on Secure Channel 1, her communications officer reported. Priority Alpha clearance. Park strode to her ready room and activated the holo projector. A middle-aged man in Earth Command uniform materialized, his weathered face showing the kind of calm that came from surviving humanity's worst conflicts. Captain, Admiral Kim said without preamble, I assume the aliens were properly dismissive? They offered us support roles, Park replied, allowing herself a thin smile. Medical aid and supply runs. They're trying to protect us from ourselves. Kim's laugh was dry as winter wind. Of course they are. They still think we're the peaceful species that joined their little galactic community 50 years ago. They never bothered to study what we were before that. The Admiral's image flickered as he accessed files. Operation Ghost Protocol is active. Every mothballed ship from the Resource Wars is being brought online. The Stalingrad, the Gettysburg, the Thermopylae, vessels that were built when humans had to fight for every scrap of metal and fuel in the solar system. Park felt a familiar chill. Those ships had names that meant something to humans. Battles where ordinary people had died in extraordinary numbers rather than surrender. The aliens wouldn't understand the significance, which was exactly the point. Personnel? She asked. Colonel Minji Lee is assembling the Wraith Company aboard the Silent Running. Veterans from the Titan Uprising, the Mars Rebellion, and the Europa Campaign. Soldiers who learned to fight in asteroid fields and lunar caves, where one mistake meant death. The names of those conflicts meant nothing to galactic civilization. To them, humanity looked peaceful because they only saw the last 50 years, the time after Earth had finally stopped fighting itself long enough to look outward. They never studied the 1,000 years before that, when humans had perfected the art of war against the most dangerous enemy they'd ever faced, other humans. The Alien Council shared their intelligence files, Park said, inserting the data crystal into her ship's computer. Full tactical analysis of HFY capabilities. Admiral... Kim's eyes gleamed. Excellent. While they were debating, we were learning. Commander Tai Ho Shin has been running battle simulations with our best tacticians. They've identified 17 potential weaknesses in HFY formations. 17? Park raised an eyebrow. Humans see patterns differently than other species, Kim explained. The aliens look at HFY victories and see invincible enemies. We look at the same data and see habits, routines, predictable responses. The HFY have won so often that they've become complacent. Park studied the tactical displays as data flowed across her screens. The alien intelligence was comprehensive. 500 years of HFY battles, detailed analysis of their weapons and shields, psychological profiles of their commanders. What the aliens saw as proof of invincibility, human eyes interpreted very differently. They always use the same opening formation, she observed. Dreadnoughts in the center, fighters screening the flanks, support vessels maintaining rear positions. It's textbook military doctrine. Exactly, Kim nodded. Perfect for intimidating enemies and crushing resistance through superior firepower. Terrible for adapting to unexpected tactics or unconventional warfare. The Admiral's image split-screened to show ship construction yards across human space. Massive industrial complexes that had been quiet for decades were now blazing with activity. Sparks flew as welders worked around the clock, adding weapon mounts and armor plating to civilian vessels. We're converting everything, Kim continued. Cargo haulers becoming missile platforms, passenger liners turning into troop transports, mining ships retrofitted as kamikaze drones. The aliens count our military vessels and think they know our strength. They never counted our merchant marine. Lieutenant Nari O appeared on another screen, speaking from the cockpit of her fighter. Admiral, the volunteer squadrons are ready. We've got former pilots from every conflict since the Belt Wars. Most of them were flying atmospheric fighters last week, but they're adapting fast. Park knew what that meant. Human pilots had learned to fight in environments where a single mistake meant burning up in a planet's atmosphere or freezing in the vacuum of space. They'd developed reflexes and instincts that other species, raised on safe worlds with predictable enemies, had never needed. Time to target? Park asked. 14 hours until the HFY reach the outer colonies, Kim replied. They're maintaining perfect formation, broadcasting intimidation messages on all frequencies, following their standard conquest protocol. The room fell quiet except for the hum of ship systems. Across human space, hundreds of vessels were moving into position, not the elegant formations favored by other species, but scattered, seemingly random deployments that would look like cowardice to alien observers. The Galactic Council will interpret our silence as retreat, Park said. Admiral Kim's smile was sharp as a blade. Let them. When this is over, they'll understand that the most dangerous human is the one who stops talking and starts thinking. Colonel Minji Lee's voice crackled through the comm system from her stealth ship. All teams report ready, Admiral. We've identified priority targets in the HFY fleet. Their command ships follow predictable patterns. They've never faced an enemy that could get close enough to exploit those patterns. Because no other species fights the way we do, Kim observed. They build bigger ships, more powerful weapons, stronger shields. We build soldiers who can think faster than their computers can calculate. Park looked at the star charts showing both fleets converging on the contested space. The HFY ships moved like clockwork, precise and unstoppable. The human vessels seemed scattered and unorganized, which was exactly how they'd designed it to appear. The aliens are about to learn something about humanity, Admiral Kim said as his image began to fade. We've been preparing for this fight, our entire history. Not against aliens, but against ourselves, and that made us into something they can't comprehend. Captain Park turned to her bridge crew. All stations, battle stations, set course for the rendezvous point. And remember, we're not just fighting for human space, we're showing the galaxy what happens when you underestimate us. The ship changed course, its engines pushing it toward a battle that would redefine humanity's place in the galactic community. Behind them, Earth's blue marble grew smaller, but the fire of human determination burned brighter than any star. The HFY fleet dropped out of hyperspace exactly where their computers predicted they would. 3,000 warships in perfect formation, their black hulls gleaming like polished obsidian against the stars. For 5 centuries, this sight had meant the end of civilizations. Admiral Zekthul stood on his flagship's bridge, reviewing intelligence reports with the casual confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. The target system contained 12 small colonies and a modest defense station. Standard conquest time, 4 hours including cleanup operations. Long-range sensors detect minimal defensive presence, reported his tactical officer. 17. Alien vessels maintaining standard patrol patterns. No sign of the primitive human ships. Zekthul's mandibles clicked in what passed for HFY amusement. The new species fled as expected, intelligent of them, though it changes nothing. Begin. Standard approach pattern. The massive fleet moved forward like a black tide, dreadnoughts leading the way with fighter squadrons screening their flanks. Every ship knew its position, every weapon was charged and ready. The HFY had turned war into an art form. Beautiful, efficient and absolutely deadly. That's when the humans struck. The attack came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Ships that hadn't been there a second ago suddenly materialized around the HFY formation, their stealth systems dropping to reveal angular, brutal-looking vessels that looked nothing like the elegant designs of other galactic species. Commander, Taeho Shin's voice cut through the tactical channel from his dreadnought Indomitable. All units execute Doctrine 7. Show them what human creativity looks like. The human ships didn't behave like any enemy the HFY had fought. Instead of forming defensive lines or trying to match firepower, they scattered in seemingly random directions. Some ships charged straight at the HFY dreadnoughts, ignoring the withering fire that should have destroyed them. Impossible, breathed Admiral Zekthul as his sensors tracked the chaotic battle developing around his fleet. He'd studied every known species combat doctrine. This wasn't tactics. This was madness. Lieutenant Nari O piloted her modified fighter. Through a cloud of HFY interceptors, her voice steady over the comm despite the impossible odds. Dragon leader to all wings. Remember, we're not trying to win a dogfight. We're trying to create chaos. Her fighter twisted through enemy fire, with movements that defied conventional physics. The modifications human engineers had made weren't about better weapons or stronger shields. They were about making human pilots even more unpredictable than they already were. A HFY dreadnought targeted one of the smaller human cruisers, its massive plasma cannons charging for what should have been a killing blow. The human ship didn't try to dodge or defend. Instead, it accelerated directly toward the enemy vessel. "Sir." The HFY tactical officer's voice cracked with confusion. "The human ship is on a collision course. They're not changing direction." Admiral Zekthul watched in disbelief as the human cruiser slammed into his dreadnought's shields at full speed. But at the last second, escape pods erupted from the human ship like seeds from a bursting fruit. The crew had abandoned ship, turning their own vessel into a guided missile. The explosion tore through the HFY shields and carved a massive gash in the dreadnought's hull. Sirens wailed as atmosphere vented into space, and secondary explosions rippled through the ship's interior. They sacrificed an entire vessel for a single attack. Zekthul's officer gasped. No, Zekthul realized with growing horror. They saved their crew and used their ship as a weapon. These humans fight like nothing we've encountered. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships rammed enemy vessels, fired weapons at point-blank range, and used tactics that should have resulted in mutual destruction, except the humans had found ways to survive what should have been suicide attacks. Colonel Minji Lee's stealth ship, silent running, materialized inside the HFY formation, its cloaking device having carried it past their outer defenses. Special operations to Fleet Command. We're inside their perimeter, beginning surgical strikes on command vessels. Her ship wasn't trying to destroy enemy dreadnoughts. It was targeting the smaller support ships that coordinated HFY fleet movements. While the aliens focused on the dramatic battles happening at the formation's edge, humans were quietly dismantling their command structure from within. The HFY adaptive shields, which had made them invincible against conventional warfare, couldn't adapt fast enough to human tactics. Just as the shields learned to defend against kinetic rounds, the humans switched to energy weapons. When the shields adapted to energy weapons, the humans started using debris clouds as projectiles. "Their shield algorithms can't process our attack patterns," reported Lieutenant Jinho Bei from his tactical station. "We're not following any known combat doctrine, so their computers don't know how to respond." That was the key insight human strategists had discovered in the alien intelligence files. The HFY had won so many battles that their technology was designed to counter every known fighting style in the galaxy. But humans had spent centuries fighting other humans, developing tactics that no alien species had ever needed to invent. Wing of human fighters swarmed a HFY battleship like angry insects. Instead of trying to penetrate its armor with weapons, they attached small charges to specific points on the hull. The explosions were tiny compared to the ship's size, but they were placed with surgical precision to disrupt critical systems. Engineering. Casualties across all forward elements, the HFY tactical officer reported, his voice rising with panic. "They're not trying to destroy our ships, they're trying to disable them." Admiral Zekthul finally understood what they were facing. The humans weren't fighting to win territory or prove their superiority. They were fighting for survival, and that made them infinitely more dangerous than any enemy the HFY had ever encountered. "Signal the fleet," he ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. "General retreat. We are withdrawing from this system." For the first time in 5 centuries, the HFY fleet turned and ran. The human ships didn't pursue. They simply watched as the supposedly invincible armada limped away, leaving behind burning wrecks and the shattered remains of their perfect formation. Commander Shin's voice came over the general comm channel, as calm as if he'd just finished a training exercise. "All ships report status. Casualty figures to fleet medical. Someone get Admiral Kim on the line and tell him the job's done." The galaxy was about to learn a new truth. The most dangerous warrior isn't the one with the best weapons, but the one who refuses to fight by anyone else's rules. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Emergency lights cast long shadows across the crystal walls as alien representatives stared at the holographic displays in stunned disbelief. The data streaming in from the battle zone told an impossible story. Moderator Velthar's grey hands trembled as he manipulated the controls, cycling through battle recordings that defied everything they thought they knew about warfare. "Confirm these readings," he whispered to his aide. "Tell me our sensors malfunctioned." The aide, a young Nexari with mandibles that clicked nervously, shook her head. "All readings verified, moderator. The HFY fleet has withdrawn from the system. Casualty estimates show 60% of their force either destroyed or heavily damaged." War Chief Gorth of the Valorians slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. His scarred face, which had shown nothing but arrogance days before, now carried the expression of someone whose entire worldview had just collapsed. 60%? In one battle, against 47 human ships? 64, corrected the aide quietly. "Intelligence confirms the humans had 64 vessels." The correction hung in the air like a physical weight. 64 ships had accomplished what the combined might of 12 galactic civilizations had deemed impossible. The mathematical impossibility of it made the Nexari intelligence officer's 8 eyes twitch in sequence. "Show me the tactical recordings again," demanded the Kashari admiral, her colorful feathers dulled with shock. "There has to be an explanation. Ships cannot simply ram through adaptive shields and survive." The holographic display activated, showing the battle from multiple angles. The assembled aliens watched human vessels perform maneuvers that violated every principle of space combat they'd ever learned. Ships that should have been destroyed instead completed their missions and limped away. Crews that should have died instead escaped in pods seconds before impact. "They evacuated their personnel before using their ships as weapons," observed the Luminid ambassador, their glow flickering with confusion. "But the timing required, the precision needed. How did they calculate such impossibilities?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Ji-won Park walked into the chamber, her uniform somehow still neat and pressed despite having just commanded humanity's first major space battle. She moved with the same quiet confidence she'd shown days before, When the entire council had dismissed her as irrelevant, every alien head turned toward her. The silence stretched like a held breath until Moderator Velthar found his voice. "Captain Park," he said, his tone completely different from their first meeting. "We have been reviewing the battle reports. Perhaps you could explain how your forces achieved such results." Park took her usual seat in the back corner, the same spot where she'd been ignored and laughed at. "The HFY fought exactly as your intelligence files predicted they would. Perfect formations, predictable tactics, by-the-book strategies." War Chief Gorth leaned forward, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "But their shields, their adaptive technology, worked perfectly," Park agreed. "Against conventional attacks. But humans don't fight conventionally. We fight to survive. And survival makes you creative." The Nexari intelligence officer's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Your casualty. Reports show 17 ships lost, 31 damaged. How did you accomplish a strategic victory while taking such losses? The mathematics suggest you don't understand human warfare," Park interrupted gently. "You count ships lost and think in terms of defeat. We count objectives achieved and missions completed. Every ship that didn't come home accomplished something that brought us closer to victory." She gestured to the holographic displays still showing battle footage. Lieutenant Nari O's fighter wing created chaos in their formations. Commander Taiho Shin's ramming attacks broke their shield algorithms. Colonel Minji Lee's stealth operations crippled their command structure. Every loss served a purpose. The Valorian war chief's voice was barely a whisper. "You planned to lose ships? You expected your people to die?" "We expected our people to do their jobs," Park replied, "and their job was to prove that the HFY could be defeated. Mission accomplished." A new voice entered the conversation as Admiral Hyun Kim materialized via hologram, his weathered face showing the satisfaction of a plan executed perfectly. "The Council asked humanity to handle the HFY threat. We did exactly that." Moderator Velthar struggled to find words. "Admiral, your species has just achieved something 12 galactic civilizations working together could not. We must discuss integration protocols, technology sharing agreements, military alliance structures." "No," Kim said simply. The word landed like a bomb in the silent chamber. Every alien representative stared at the human admiral in shock. "No," squeaked the Nexari officer, "but surely you understand the implications. Your tactical capabilities, your strategic innovations, your combat effectiveness will remain humanity's responsibility," Kim finished. "We didn't fight this battle to join your power structures or command your fleets. We fought it because it needed fighting, Captain." Park stood up, her movement drawing every eye in the chamber. "The galaxy has spent centuries building bigger ships, stronger weapons, more advanced technology. You forgot that wars aren't won by superior equipment. They're won by superior will." She walked toward the chamber exit, then paused and turned back. "The HFY will remember this defeat. They'll spread word that humanity is not to be underestimated. That should buy the galaxy some peace." "But where does this leave us?" Velthar called after her. "What is humanity's role in galactic affairs now?" Park's smile was slight but genuine. "The same role we've always preferred. Watching from the shadows, learning from our mistakes, staying ready for when the galaxy truly needs us." The door sealed behind her, leaving the alien representatives alone with their shattered assumptions and uncomfortable new reality. The youngest species in galactic civilization had just rewritten the rules of warfare, and they wanted nothing in return except to be left alone. War Chief Gorth broke the silence with a shaky laugh. "We offered them support roles, medical aid and supply runs." The Nexari intelligence officer's voice carried a new note of respect. "Perhaps we should be grateful they accepted the role of protector instead." As reports continued flowing in from across the galaxy, one fact became crystal clear to every alien civilization. Humanity had been silent during that first briefing, not because they were afraid or overwhelmed, but because they were already 10 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. The galaxy's newest members had just become its most dangerous guardians, and they'd done it so quietly that no one noticed until it was too late to stop them. From now on, when humans stayed silent, the wise would start listening very carefully indeed.